So far we have talked about how to use variables to store a single value or a group of values through dictionaries and arrays. And today we're going to talk more about actually manipulating this data. So let's say we just initialize x to 0. And then let's say I want to increment x by 1. I can say x plus equals 1. And now if I print x, we will see the value of 1 printed out. But let's say we want to do this 5 times. So I can copy and paste this command 5 times, and I'll get the value of 5. But that is a tedious thing to do. What we would rather do is have it automatically do this multiple times. So what we're going to use is called a loop. And the first loop we'll talk about is the while loop. So while. And this is a conditional loop that will continue running while a certain statement is true. So I can say while x is less than 5, x plus equals 1, and then we'll print x. And we get our 5. So that is a very succinct way to write those repetitive x plus equals 1 statements. But there are a few things to notice about the while loop. One is this condition here. So it's going to run while x is less than 5. Now let's say I accidentally said while x is greater than 5. And let's initialize x to 6. So what will happen is it will say while 6 is greater than 5, we're going to change 6 to 7. Is 7 greater than 5? We'll change it to 8. Is 8 greater than 5? Etc., etc. And we will never meet our condition to stop the loop. And this is called an infinite loop. So if I run this, it will never stop running until I actively stop it. So when we use the while loop, we want to think carefully about what our condition is for running the loop and make sure that our condition is at some point met within the loop. Also notice that x has to exist prior to its use in the while loop. So if I delete the x up here, what will happen is it will say while x is greater than 5, but the program has no idea what x actually is. So this will give us an error, and that error is because x is not yet defined. And oftentimes this leads to an extraneous variable. So it may be that I want to manipulate x 5 times, but x equals 6, and what I want to do is add 88 to it, or some crazy number like that. What I'm going to need is an additional variable called my counter, and we'll set that to 0, and we'll say while the counter is greater than 5, and we're going to also have to increment our counter in addition. So let's run this, and we'll see 446, so it has added 88 to 6 5 times. Now this requires an additional statement here to increment a counter which had to be declared up here. And then once we're done with the while loop, anytime we're doing things down in this area after the loop, this counter variable is still going to be taking up space in memory. So it would be better in this instance if we could declare the variable in the actual while loop itself. And we can do this with what's called a for loop. So what I can say is for counter in range, and I can say 5. So this will give me a range of 0 to 5, including the 0, not including the 5, and it will do the same thing. So I can say x plus equals 88. And if I run this, you'll see we get the same output. So this has allowed me to declare my variable counter within the statement of my for loop. Also, it will automatically increment my counter with each iteration of the loop. So every time it comes back to the top, it will go ahead and increment counter for me. Now the for loop is also particularly useful when working with arrays and dictionaries. So to show this, let's first work with a while loop. And we'll declare a new array with the values of 5, 6, and 7. And what I want to do is print out each value one by one. So what I need is a variable called index. We'll set it to 0. And we'll say while index is less than the number of items in X. So we'll say the length of X. Now, unlike the indices, which are 0-based, the length is not. So it's going to give us 3. So while index is less than 3, we are going to print X at whatever index we're currently looking at. And then we will increment index by 1. So when we run this, we'll get 5, 6, 7, and I did not take out this print statement. That's why you see the array printed out down there. But you can see we will go through the array one item at a time and print it. Instead of that, though, we can use our for loop. Let's get rid of this print statement. We can use our for loop to print each item in the array. So I can say for each in X. Now, just to be clear, I'm saying each here, and you can name this part whatever you want. So I can say for sloth in X. This is a variable name, and I can make the variable name whatever I want. I just like to use each because it makes sense as a sentence for each in X. And then when I refer to it down here, it makes sense as well. So I'm going to say print each. And this too will print out 5, 6, 7. So using the for loop, we can extract the values of an array. But what about a dictionary? So in this instance, things are going to work slightly differently. And let's say our dictionary is first, and the first value is 1. And actually, let's call this 1. And then we'll say 2 is the value 2, and the key of 3 references the value of 3. So if I say print for each in X, print each, whereas in the array, this extracted values, in the dictionary, this is going to extract the keys. So if I run this, we will print the words 1, 2, 3. So using a for loop on an array gives you the values, whereas using a for loop on a dictionary gives you the keys. And in order to extract the values from the dictionary, what I'll do is I'll say print X with the key, not in quotes, of each. And here I will get my 1, 2, 3. So loops are one of the primary ways in which we will manipulate data, whereas variables and dictionaries and arrays are some of the primary ways of storing data. But if we want to do multiple manipulations in a row, so let's change X to an array. Let's say 1, 2, 3. And we'll say for each in X, X plus equals 1. And then let's say we want to do that 5 more times. We can do that loop multiple times, but that is a tedious way to do things. Just like it was tedious to say X plus 1 over and over, it's going to be tedious to do this loop over and over. So rather than that, we're going to want a way to reuse our code in what is called a function. And we will talk about that in the next lesson. So if this video was useful for you, please leave a like. It helps me grow the channel and it will help other people find the video. And again, if you would like to see these tools used in a broader context, I recommend checking out my Developer Diary series, where I am working long-term on big projects and actually putting these tools to use. So thank you for watching, I hope you learned something, and I will see you in the next one.